Well, good morning and welcome back. And today actually we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to continue our study with James. But yesterday, I asked at the end for people to write in to share comments and all that. We get so many emails, personally, privately, texts. Some of you comment. But we thought, hey, we could make this more interactive. And somebody took us up on that. We actually got one person who wrote me personally and one person who wrote in on the comments on YouTube, both asking about basically the same thing. But I thought the question on the YouTube comments was actually the best one. And it's concerning this whole idea of endurance. And so we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on that today, and then be able to respond to that question exactly. So in order to get some context, we're going to start by reading the verses again that are so relevant for this. Is the very beginning of James, and then this last verse that we just did yesterday, verses 2 to 4 and verse 12. So if you could read those, 2 to 4 plus verse 12, that'd
Sure.
be great.
Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. And verse 12, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. After the word, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him.
Well, both of these sections have as their key, which actually I think has been the key for this whole piece, as we talked about yesterday, of endurance. And it's that word that we talked about in some detail, upomene. Upo means under, right? It's like hypodermic. That's where we get that word, upo. Under the skin is upodermic. But the mone is to remain, to stay, to linger. And so upomene is to stay even when you're feeling under a burden, right? It's hard and you stay with it. You don't give up. That's what upomene is. It's this sense of just persevering through something that's painful. And James is saying there's this incredible fruit that comes from doing that. And that we grow up, we become mature and complete, he said in the first day, in the very beginning. And then just in verse 12, he said that it's actually the key to finding the fullness of life that God has promised to all of us. So this seems like a really good thing. I think all of us agree, yes, okay then, we want to do this. However, and this is the question that we got yesterday on the YouTube chat, which I thought was so good. In fact, I'm going to read it here. She wrote, what if you don't have any endurance? How do you get more? And I feel like, what a great question. Now, I'm going to tell you, this question is even better. It really doesn't matter who asked that question. That's one that's relevant to all of us right now. This one happens to be from Isabel Fung, who maybe a lot of you don't know, but the Isabel Fung I know, 7 or 8 years old. I mean, this is a very insightful question from a young person that I feel like applies to all people. What an important question. Okay, if we want to have endurance in the face of these trials, how do we get it? How do we find it? And I think that question is even more important right now because, frankly, all of us are depleted. We've had it between this months of isolation and uncertainty about the future and difficulties with the recession that may be coming and anxieties about racism and all of it. It's just been overwhelming 4 months. And so whatever sort of strength and resolve that we came into this period with, maybe back in March, we spent it already. And so a lot of us just don't feel like, I don't know that I can endure anymore. And in fact, we had a funny exchange. You had a funny exchange with a bunch of women who were talking. Tell us about that, because I just think it's so relevant.
I think a couple of us were chatting via text, and we were recognizing that this is hard, that it's hard right now. Life is hard. Things are being thrown our way that weren't exactly expected, and we're wanting to endure. And one of the women commented, this is enough growth for a while, thank you. And just recognizing like, okay, we're done. Growth is awesome, but I need a break.
One of my friends, when I was a young Christian, one of the first pastors I worked for, he said, reflecting on a very difficult circumstance in his own life, he said, okay, well, if this is the price of spiritual depth, I choose superficiality. Yes, we all have days when we can relate to that. But it is true that the price of maturity, being complete, having life, spiritual depth is being able to endure in these difficult circumstances. So, how do we do that? Well, the first thing to know is that we can do it. Because a lot of times we feel like, oh, that's it, it's just too big, it's too much. But we have this promise from 1 Corinthians 10:13, where actually Paul guarantees us. He writes, he says, the temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure. So God will never give us a trial that is more than God knows we can endure. Now, some of us think, I think maybe God thinks too much of me. Maybe he's kind of got that wrong. God doesn't have it wrong. God knows what you can really handle. Now, what is also true is these trials are meant to grow us. And so it may not be what you can endure right now, but God is growing you into the person who can endure this, and God will provide a way. So, how do we do that? Well, as I had reflected on this question, I just thought, wow, what a great question, and immediately started thinking, and actually 3 things jumped into my mind. And the first one was that we just have to find what refuels us. You know, all of us can name the things that are draining us these days, right? We all know that. But very few people are good at being able to name what refuels us. And I'm going to tell you there's a big distinction that a lot of us miss. A lot of us know what to do with amusement. Now, for those of you who are kind of nerds like me, muse, that word muse, actually talks about is creativity. So when somebody, an artist, talks about having a muse, it's the person who stimulates them to creativity. In the beginning is actually the negative particle. And so it means not creative. It's actually dulling your creativity. And I experienced that. If I just watched 3 hours of YouTube videos, I was amused, but I am not rejuvenated, right? Actually, my creativity is dulled. That's the opposite of recreation, right? Recreating us. And so we need to discover what are those things that recreate us. And that's going to be different for each of us. For me, it's going to be talking about my problems either with God, taking time in silence, me to talk about with God, or talking about them with somebody I really trust. Sometimes you and I have these conversations that are really important, and that refuels me. Other times it's going out in nature and seeing beauty, and just being able to see what God has made, and for some reason that refuels me. For me, Bible study and listening to worship music, I love that. We have that playing in our house so often, and it's just encouraging, and it's these healthy reminders, and I get them in my head, and I love it. So those are some of the things that fuel me. Actually, one for me is adrenaline. I love doing adrenaline things. So go skiing or go do something crazy or ride my motorcycle. I love that kind of stuff. So how about for you? What are some of the things that really fuel you?
I think similar. In some of the ways, but nature is a big part. So getting outside, seeing what God has created, working out. So somehow getting endorphins up and just sort of getting that anger or that frustration or whatever, using my body to be able to express it. So I'm tiring my body so that my mind is a little more able to process and think. Just talking out loud with God about my feelings, being super real about them. Sometimes it's actually just having grace with and compassion and just curling up in bed and being able to go, this is okay. This is all right. This is hard. And being able to acknowledge that I need a break, and a break is good, and a break is okay. And recognizing that's one step forward. It's not a chance to pull away and pull out and say, I'm done, but it's, okay, I'm regrouping.
I think those are all great examples. One of the pastors we knew well when we were young, he was very old at that time, and so he talked about, we all know that our body is our temple. And so he realized just at his age, he needed to go and take naps sometimes in the middle of the day. He was just so exhausted. And so he wouldn't call it a nap. He'd call it temple maintenance. I'm going to go do some temple maintenance. And, but I was like, what a great thing. I mean, the reality is that sometimes a nap is exactly what you need. Mm-hmm. So finding those things that refuel you. And here's really the trick, is finding things that you love. Yes. So a lot of people think that our strength is going to come from our determination and our resolve, and we're going to work harder, we're going to grit our teeth. The Bible doesn't talk about it that way. The Bible says in Nehemiah that the joy of the Lord is going to be your strength. And so you've got to discover what is it that allows you to share God's joy, whatever that is, that is going to end up being the source of your strength. That's going to allow you to endure whatever the difficult
I
situation.
actually remember coming up with a list for myself and just keeping it on my desk and going, okay, and because it takes work to be in communication with those things that actually do bring joy and recreate.
Especially
and
when
so,
you're tired.
yes.
You just don't have the creativity to think, what is it I like?
And so I actually would go back to those lists during those time and go, okay, that no. Yes, that's something that brings me joy. That's something I can do right now. And so having a place when you're tired to be able to go and be reminded.
Yes. These are so good, but we are going too long already. So we're going to go quickly on the second two. The second two are simply, at least for me, and I think as I pastor a lot of other people, I think it's connecting, right? God said the one thing that in relationship, because the one thing that isn't good in all of creation, God loved everything. He says very, very good. The one thing that was not good in creation was a person alone. And these days we're all forced to be alone, and we need to find new ways to be with people and just create new patterns, whether it's creating a standing Zoom date or a phone call or go and walk with somebody from 6 feet apart, whatever it is. We need to create some regular rhythms for relationship, because a lot of our rhythms were interrupted.
Yes.
And then the third one, which is a little counterintuitive, when you feel depleted, I really think that one of the best things we can do is start to serve others. It gets our eyes off ourselves, and it allows us to start to kind of re-engage that sense of, hey, I am a part of the body of Christ, and God is at work through me. And again, I think in this pandemic, so many of the ways typically many of us have served aren't available anymore, and it makes it harder. And we've got to find those new rhythms. And I hadn't planned it this way, but the reality is these actually correspond. It's connecting to God personally, connecting to God's people, and connecting to God's purposes. These things we always say at High Rock. I really do think that's the trick. We've got to find clear and consistent ways that we're able to do each of those three things. That is going to be the trick to finding this endurance that allows us to go through these trials and come out better for them rather than coming out destroyed by them.
That's good.
All right. Well, we went too long, but Isabel, thank you for that question, and I hope you guys will all keep them coming. We're going to head right back into the next verse tomorrow, but we would love to have more interaction and really make this something that we all sort of do together. So anyway, thanks for that, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Or Monday.
Oh, yeah. Hey, it's the weekend. Have fun. We'll see you on Monday.
Have a good 4th.